Good morning, everybody. Making some good progress on the coffee shop this week, just in terms of solidifying contracts and started breaking down the walls in there in terms of the drywall, exposing it for the plumbers and all that, electricians. It's a lot of work. Also working on our basement. We got to finish that off because the kid can't use the bathroom on this floor anymore. But we're getting there. It's a lot of work. But I hope everyone's doing really well right now. It's middle of summer. It's been a warm summer, but it hasn't been too unpleasant here in the upper Midwest anyway. I know in Europe it's been blazing hot in parts of Australia and even parts of the U.S., but here in Minnesota it's been fairly pleasant as of late, knock on wood. Been digging through that Keynote box set, and boy, it's just a great piece of history. So many legends are in that box. I heard some piano playing by Earl Hines the other day, and I think it was either with Cozy Cole leading, or maybe it was the Charlie Shavers group leading. But Earl Hines was just intricate, dynamic acrobatics. I mean, like, it was spatially open, but there was these crazy shapes and things that I think Monk would have been like. It was, again, mid-40s. And so Hines is a much bigger influence than people realize. He's one of the ultimate pianists in this music. A guy of just really unrivaled talent. I mean, short of Art Tatum, Earl Hines was the baddest MFer. And it's his legacy, probably more than Tatum's even, that really shapes most of the pianists to come. His virtuosity was next level. His dexterity, his rhythmic pulse, his dynamic capabilities to be a soft pianissimo and just big and loud. And again, some of the things I heard on there, I was just like, it was really advanced and incredibly modern. In 1946, Hines was just doing it. And, he goes back to playing with Armstrong in the 20s. And he was always a very well-respected, this side of a showman piano player. Tatum gets a lot of that recognition now. But you read a lot of the piano players' bios and who they were influenced by. And Earl Hines is one of those names that just really was a big impact on most piano players, probably more so than Tatum. Tatum's virtuosity and it's Oscar Peterson level in terms of it's almost just a non-stop flourish of sound and notes and runs. And Hines has more pocket. Hines has more minimalism at times, and just the groove of the blues and the groove of rhythm and blues. Hines has all that anchored in him, so it's not just flash and show and long flowing lines. There's also a lot of pocket and space. Hines led a big band for a long time into the 40s and 50s, and he was one of the great proving grounds for a lot of the young black talent, along with Basie, along with Ellington, along with Lionel Hampton. And I would say Lionel Hampton and Earl Hines share that legacy of being hugely impactful jazz players who somewhat slip under the radar today, especially once you get past, the deepest of jazz heads. Scott Baldwin and Jean-Michel, they love Hines and they love Lionel Hampton, Teddy Wilson. But when you talk about the younger collectors today, people kind of getting into jazz, they're many chapters away from discovering Hampton and Hines, and their virtuosity, their capabilities, their influence is of high impact. And they both were as important socially in terms of the young men that they helped bring into jazz and establish as a guy like Miles Davis or Art Blakey in the next couple decades. Like those guys, especially Blakey, was a real training ground. And Miles was more taking people from proven units and entities already kind of established. Blakey was taking people out of high schools. That's Blakey's MO. He was a great talent scout, one of the great talent scouts of the 50s and 60s, really into the 70s and 80s. Blakey's still doing it, hiring young kids to play around his ageless, wondrous self. But Hines, like I said, is really a guy that should be getting more recognition today. He makes some fine recordings, Contact, Impulse, a lot of stuff for Verve, Clef, and it's the same for Lionel Hampton stuff. There's Hampton recordings from the late 40s on Clef, Norgran, Verve, that are completely modern, completely dynamic, complete high-level virtuosity, and they kind of go in that forgotten book. Hampton with the Flying Home with Illinois Jack Cat, and that long line of tenor players that follows Jack Cat. These were astounding performances that brought people to their feet and just shook the foundations of what was happening. And so both Hampton and Hines, I think, are two of the most talented players that today's collectors are kind of ignoring or not being told about. They're not being reissued, so there's not this kind of clamor for these guys. And yet anybody from the 60s and 50s and even the 70s would recognize the influence and impact that Hampton and Hines had. And it's not just on the players of the vibraphone, the players of the piano. These guys were universal in their impact. And like a Parker, they made everybody on every instrument want to add some of that to their repertoire. Hines is a guy that I think words fall short. Hampton, too, for that matter. When Benny Goodman brings in Lionel Hampton and Teddy Wilson, those guys were so incredible. The place would sometimes be silent. People were so in awe of what these guys were doing. So I want to do a little fun thing today, moving forward here. I just want to play some things I love. And we're not going to be limited to just jazz right now. I think we need to broaden the scope at times, just to kind of keep things fresh and to hopefully attract some new listeners. I want people who aren't necessarily jazz fans to see how it does dovetail with a lot of other things, and you can make it part of a very hip, chic universe. And you don't have to be an uppity jazz snob with a monocle to be like, oh, I love jazz. You can love hip-hop and love jazz. You can love reggae and love jazz. You can love electronic music, and jazz will graft itself into all those places. It's incredibly versatile. And it's not like I picked out a set or nothing. I just went and picked out some stuff I loved. And jazz has roots everywhere. This is pop delight. Dean Martin, of course. And what's so impressive about Sway, which is what this is called, his voice is really beautiful here. He's younger, less intoxicated, less hungover. Dean was quite the party guy by the 60s and 70s when he's on reprise and doing the Sands and all that stuff. He's still a bit of a younger party animal here. This Greatest Hits is a wonderful place to start with Dean Martin. Come back to Sorrento. Hey Brother, Pour the Wine. That's Amore. Memories Are Made of This. It's You're Nobody Till Somebody Loves You is one of my favorite songs. And of course, Sway is a song I've been dropping in my DJ sets for 15 years. It adds a certain element of swank. It's used in enough film soundtracks that people might not recognize it, but it feels connective. They're like, oh, there's a poshness to this, and okay, I get it. And there's always a few people that I like, oh, I love Dean Martin, I grew up with my dad. But there's always half the room that's going, whatever this is really cool. I like it. Let me put my phone up and Shazam that shit. That's the modern day. What's the DJ play? And they don't come ask you anymore. And what's so impressive about this song, by the way? Listen to the strings here. It's being recorded mid-50s, late 50s. And if I remember, it's on a 4-track recording at Capitol. And so this band, Orchestra, playing behind him, It's an incredible ensemble of super talented readers who can deliver a take with all this great instrumentation and strings and plucked violins and great vocal choruses, and just the production's incredible. But it wasn't sat there being overdubbed and tracked at separate times. These guys were playing in a big room. That's some bad motherfuckerisms right there. Some bad motherfuckerisms. You gotta get that. Another song I absolutely love is from the damn Yankees. That's the great Sarah Vaughan. And in my mind, she never sounds better than she sounds here. She's young, she's sassy. Of course, that was her nickname. Whatever Lola wants, Lola gets. And nice little 7-inch. Patty Page is cool. I like Vic Damone sometimes too. I don't really know much about Rusty Draper, but it's a song I've been playing in my sets again for absolutely years. It's swanky. It's right away broadening the horizons of what your audience is going to expect. They're like, oh, I've heard this in film, so okay, what is this? What's he going to play? And so you're kind of opening Pandora's box with a song like this, because it's a really broad universe where a song like this exists. And it's not something that they're going to expect necessarily when they go into a club to watch a DJ, you know? So it's just a fun place to take people. One of my other favorite records in the world. I mean, I've played this record, I would guess, easily over 1,000 times. It's got such a cool vibe and atmosphere, and it's never stale. It's deep house is what it is, which adds organic elements, real bass playing, some real percussion. It's not just all canned diva house, you know what I mean? This is Music and Wine by Blue Six, and this album is called Beautiful Tomorrow, and it's truly one of my favorite records ever. It just has this awesome atmosphere to it. The vocals are never too Princess Diva. They're very much organic with a certain amount of melancholy, but there's an urban rhythm and blues aspect that's brought into this. The cover, which these Naked Music records all have these great covers, it just sets an atmosphere and a tone of blue melancholy. And Let's Do It Together, Music and Wine, Sweeter Love, Pure, All I Need. I mean, I love just about this entire record. Come Inside, Pure, Beautiful Tomorrow. And the album is called Beautiful Tomorrow, by the way, and it's from like 1998. No, 2002. Talking about a record that stood the test of time for me. The vocal still sounds beautiful. Jay Dennis, I'm not sure how it's said, is the main guy in Blue Six. I like a lot of their other records as well. And Dave Boonshoft plays the bass on these records. And he just has this great bass tone with some cool bends, and really good bass player. That really adds a dynamic to what this music's about. And like deep house like this is just as loungy and fits in right next to that Lola so well. Another piece I've loved and played a lot of DJ sets with this track is by Artie Shaw. So now we're going back a ways here. But Begin the Beguine is melody personified. And it just shuffles along. There's that clarinet. It's like a spoonful of syrupy medicine. It's cloaked with goodness and enriching qualities that will coat your throat. It's a sick syrup. Artie Shaw is a brilliant player who was kind of the counter to Benny Goodman. Both Jews, both a broad sense of appeal, very talented players in their orchestras. I love a lot of Artie Shaw. He's a bad guy, but again, we're not talking dated. We're talking something that's very hip today. And the melody will absolutely stick in people's head. They'll walk out being like, what was that song with the wonderful, melancholic brooding sensibilities. You know, I've had a lot of people ask me what this was. And I'm talking young, hip people like, oh my God, that was so cool. What song was that? And I'm like, that song goes back decades. You know, pre-war. That's some old stuff. So again, there's so many cool ways you can thread stuff together. Then you add a piece like this into the mix. And the great Marty Robbins. Again, melody. You can't hear that vocal and not be like, oh. It's got a great lilting groove to it. This is a great song. And it's like a Tarantino soundtrack. You can take great songs, but because they're so great, they'll stand on their own accord. You don't need to have a whole set of context to make this song make sense. You can drop this in anywhere, and it has a sense of belonging. Like, you're not going to play it, obviously, at midnight. But if you're doing a lounge set, if you're doing this set, you know, for a brunch, which I was doing for years, this is a great song to eat bacon and eggs to. And the vocal is just absolutely wonderful. And now a great thing to do is to take songs that people will recognize from great films. And this song, of course, became quite legendary after The Big Lebowski. One of my favorite films, one of the great films by the Coen brothers that's kind of hard to put into any genre. It's a very broad film with comedy and mystery and suspense and action and a bit of a thriller, a bit of a noir element. There's a lot of fun things in Big Lebowski. It's more than just a dumb bowling film. And there's a lot of interesting commentary, too, on male-female dynamics in life. But this song was made pretty famous again in that film, and no one can ever replace who it is. It's Kenny Rogers with his first group called The First Edition. And there's Kenny, a young man right there. It's a great song, and you're gonna see, you know, him walking in that dream sequence to this track. Film can really give a song a rebirth, especially a cult classic like The Big Lebowski. A song I love dearly by a Canadian legend, the great Gordon Lightfoot, in the Early Morning Rain. There's a yearning in his voice here. But again, it's that melodic phrasing of the vocal. And to me, that haunting vocal that has that great, it doesn't just echo the root note. It uses thirds and fifths and sevenths and creates interesting intervals for our ears to be intrigued by. Great melody is an intriguing, entrancing thing that sucks us in and makes us remember it. And it's not something that is limited to genre or race or anything else. It's just an inherent thing of great songwriting. And when you hear it, you feel it, and you know that connected with you. And again, this vocal is just wonderful. It's a pretty simple, basic guitar, and I love a number of his songs, from Evan Fitzgerald to Railroad Trilogy to Sundown. What a great song that is. I love Gordon Lightfoot. You can't really go wrong with anything Gordon does. I'm a huge fan of jazz guitar, and I find jazz guitar is something you can drop in anywhere in a set. It's light, it's frivolous, it's buoyant. It feels like you could be watching a Cary Grant film. Audrey Hepburn, you know what I mean? It's marvelous, Tom. 50s, especially guitar jazz, just has a great, relatable sound and tonality to it that I think anybody can really enjoy. This, of course, is a great Joe Puma. I'm a huge Joe Puma guy. This is on the Jubilee label. It's a kind of a tougher record to find, but you can find it for $30. And Joe's just so fun, you know. And again, just a fantastic player that's very much kind of overlooked today. His body of work isn't massive, but it's all worth having for sure. Another case of a song with a great melody is Witchcraft. We got Frank Sinatra doing it here. A lot of people do Witchcraft. It's just slanky, slightly behind the beat. It's got just this cool feel here. And the vocal, again, is just wonderfully melodically drafted. And the horns in the background are fantastic. As the vocal kind of steps up, it builds in a little intensity. And it's just one of those great songs that's part of the songbook that you look for those great versions of these songs. It's witchcraft, Frank. You're absolutely right. You gotta watch out for that witchcraft. So another thing I like to drop in is good hip hop. Jurassic 5, classic Los Angeles, kind of deeper, organic roots hip hop from '02. This was like the first full, like, that great EP before this. Hold on to that feeling, freedom. You know, it's connected to all the legacy of the music that comes before it. Freedom. It's, again, hip hop needs to have more like this. It's positive. It's got melody again. It's pretty simple because hip hop will usually be simple, but it's something I love dearly. Tuna's a great rapper. Then you gotta get a little funk in there, and this is disco funk, and it's by Monk's kids actually, T.S. Monk. I think 2 of them are Monk's children, if I remember. I know one is for sure. A great record though. Yeah, Boo Boo Monk and Thelonious Monk Jr. And this song is killer. It's called Bon Bon V, Living the Good Life. It's a song I used to play a lot on my Friday night old school R&B sets. And a lot of people kind of forgot about T.S. Monk, but it's really solid, well-produced R&B. I think it's on the Mirage label, which was distributed by someone bigger. I can't, maybe Arista, but again, this record that's not too hard to find. It was like a #1 hit, so it's out there to be found if you want to dig for it. Another fantastic song here. It's got that real blaxploitation feel to it. People are going to be swinging along to it. By the great Willie Hutch, who was a Motown writer, does some soundtracks, and actually makes a great string of records as a leader in the mid-'70s to late '70s. And this is kind of this little intro here. And then there's this pause. It's called Get Ready for the Get Down. Mark of the Beast is great. Life's No Fun Living in the Ghetto is great. Nice bass lines right there. And then it's going to drop into this pocket right now. It's going to pause. Pocket all day. You know, there's Monk and there's bassy in that. Spaced and breeze, the bass, it's all wonderful looping pieces that fit so well. And Willie was a bad man. People kind of sleep on Willie Hutch. Another song most people will know, they might have forgotten who it was, is Don't Treat Me This Way by the great Thelma Houston. Another one of those disco R&B records that sold really well. You can find this still in yard sales and thrift stores for $1 or $2. It's a great song. I think it's Campbell and Huff, Philly International. No, it's Tamla, Motown. Produced by Clayton Ivey and Terry Woodford. It's produced by different people, Hal Davis. But Don't Treat Me This Way, Don't Leave Me This Way was produced by Hal Davis. Great song. Staple of dance floors for decades, really. But yet, importantly, it's still kind of a loungy, chic vibe to it. It's not too over-the-top disco. You know, again, it's not diva. It's kind of more on the deeper side of things, which I like about it. A song I love and played in a lot of my sets for years was by a pretty forgotten guy by the name of Hank D'Amico, a great clarinetist who didn't get a lot of work as a leader, only 1 or 2 records. This is on Bethlehem, and listen to that swinging clarinet. fantastic. It's one of those songs that kind of sticks around like a clove cigarette. It just will stick to your skin and get in your shirt, and you'll be wearing it all day. Bernie's Tune's a great song, and a pretty famous person did it first. I'm going to have to look at the record and see if it tells me. It says Miller in the credits, but I don't know if that's Glenn Miller. I don't think it is. But I've heard that version. I was signed on by a lot of people. It's almost always pretty cool. But I can't tell you who wrote it off the top of my head. I know I've looked it up before, but my memory ain't what it used to be, no question about it. Now, a record you could pick almost any song from. I usually went with this track. It's beautiful. Some singing trombone there by a guy by the name of Ola Hansen. And Ola, I think he makes a record at Savoy. The Young Bloods, isn't he on that, if I remember? I think he's a Cleveland or Ohio guy, if I remember. But it's Sonny Chris, the great West Coast player, who kind of gets overlooked a lot today. Chris had a lot of great recordings, he had a bad drug habit, so he disappears off the scene at times. He wasn't on the labels a lot of collectors today collect, like Peacock and Imperial. He does have some later prestige recordings, but this song is just moody. And there's the great Sonny Chris on the alto. Just, there's a sorrow, and again, a yearning. My ears always sense yearning and sorrow. I think I can, the human condition has me programmed to think for those type of things. So you could go for something like this into one of the most glorious versions of Summertime you'll ever hear. And of course, Summertime's been done endlessly. That's the great Joe Gordon. Just a wonderful player who sadly dies in a fire. Not a way you hear a lot of grown men dying from. But again, this is from the Black Hawk in 1959. Great band with Richie Kamuka and Shelly Manne. Is it Leroy Vinegar on the bass on this? I think it is. Where does it say the band? Oh, it's just a great record all across the board. Shelly, Joe Gordon. Is that Hampton Hawes? I'm trying to remember. Monty Bubbins on the bass. Victor Feldman's on the piano. That's Victor Feldman. That's what that is. I knew that. Great stuff. A wonderful, moody, brooding 10 minutes of somberness. And it'll just be the perfect elixir for whoever's in the room. I mean, it'll just coat them in that moisture of melancholy. It's wonderful stuff. Fatback. I love Fatback. I have every Fatback record, which there's almost 20 of them. Great New York, proto-disco funk. They don't really fit in any dovetailed designation. They're kind of early hip-hop in a way. Some of the first raps were Fatback with King Tim. I think the first recorded rap was King Tim with Fatback. But Let Me Do It To You, I'll do it. But this song's great. This song, though, slow funk, influenced by G-Funk, obviously. The George Duke, P-Funk, all that kind of slow synth bass. Everyone was influenced by each other. Great drop down here. And it's like, come on, everybody, let's party, you know? Here it opens up right now. Get on up, raise your hands, let's party. It's one of those songs that's so cool. You don't have to know it to dig it. And that's really the ultimate test of most songs. Great song. Very, like it's very influenced by the George Duke, Reach For It, and P-Funk era. You know, it's got that same kind of dynamic to it. But it's a song I used to play all the time. And you could see people in the room by the second chorus singing along. And that's your measuring stick of what great songs are. As a DJ, you want them to be able to hear it and love it halfway through hearing it. Because most of us are going to put our nose up to things we don't know. But if it's good enough, it's funky enough, melodic enough of a hook, people will embrace it on that first listen. Again, a record I love dearly. Raekwon, the chef with Tony Stark's, aka Ghostface Killer, early Wu-Tang side project. The Wu-Tang's first record was like 94. And in 95, they dropped that ODB record, that Method Man Tikal, Raekwon. I think Iron Man Ghostface comes out in 95. Ghostface, his first record. I love that record. I can't think what it's called right now. But those, I think that Jizza might even come out. There's like 5 records that come out really quickly as part of the Wu Empire. And this Raekwon Ghostface stuff is high level, great production. RZA's still kind of behind it. There's good melodies in a lot of this stuff. Some cool strings. And you have to watch over some of the language on this one. But I do have some edited 7 inches, 10 inches, and 12 inches, sorry. Edited 12-inch singles that will have edited versions I can play live. Not to worry about, oh shoot, crank down the mids, they're about to curse. And of course, we're more sensitive to that stuff now than we've been in a long time. So we got to be really careful with what we play. But it's just a fun way to look at music. If it's good, it's good. And again, the measuring stick here is about groove and melody and being memorable. Making you want to hear it again after you heard it. That's a linchpin. And so sometimes when people get frustrated with me talking about some of the music that's less accessible, less fun to listen to, by a lot of these metrics, that's not good music. If it takes you 10 listens to like it, you just got used to it. And unless everybody else in the room is all of a sudden saying, yeah, this is great, it's still what it is, difficult. It's still a naughty child, you know? And it's okay to like that stuff. And that's one of the other things I wanted to get across today, is I've talked about peer pressure coming from the vinyl community, from the industry, where that influence is coming from. But there's also a certain amount of inside how I want to be perceived in the jazz community that I think is worse here than any other place in the music kingdom. And we all think that we're going to be seen as intellectuals and converts of the arts. And boy, they're going to be impressed with me for me listening to this. And people get all upset when I talk about this, but most of what we do, the cars we choose to drive, a lot of it is how are people going to see me? The clothes we wear is how are people going to perceive me? The food we eat, the beer we drink, the wine we partake in. A lot of it's revealing who you want people to see you as. And music to me is one of the strongest ways to get across how I want the world to see me. And yet a lot of people who are doing that get so defensive, like, oh, you're nonsense. That's bullshit. But it's not. It's a human instinct. It's how we want people to read us and go, wow, they're sophisticated, they're intellectual, they're so deep. I wish I could be that. And I think jazz suffers from a certain type of people that are as strongly governed by that as any other group in society. We're a group of people that wants to be intellectual and seen as advanced. And we are an intellectual group. That's part of the problem, is that we do draw in a lot of the most sophisticated and intellectual types. And a lot of it's, I think, there's a sensibility that I'm supposed to listen to jazz now if I want to be that person. Which I think makes people listen to jazz for the wrong reasons and hear it in the wrong way. And it's why I think a lot of us are so inclined to love difficult stuff, because we feel like, well, that's part of the deal. And I agreed to wear the monocle. And so if I'm going to wear the monocle of sophistication, I got to like jazz music, and Ornette Coleman's the only way to do it. You know, it's the only way to do it, is I think Bitches Brew is fantastic, because it took me 10 years to get it. And DJing for people in clubs and bars and restaurants, I can tell you what is accessible and what people do want to like and listen to and want to come up and ask me about. And that is in a lot of ways the measuring stick. that I use to govern and to speak. Which DJing changed me. Pre-DJ, I was very much, I wanted to be perceived as only the most intellectual and deepest of philosophical minds. And I listened to nothing but Archie Shepp, Albert Eiler, and Alice Coltrane all day long. Can you hear the monks singing in my attic? I am very posh. I'm marvelous. That's kind of the thing you think you're achieving. Because I was me. I did it. It's not that conscious. It's very subconscious. But again, it's that we're steering ourselves to a place to be seen as, I like expensive Bordeaux. I mean, it's got to have a great label, and people can see me at the party with that Bordeaux. You know what I mean? I need to have the car that just makes people see me in that light. Whether it's a big pickup truck or a fine German Audi or a fast Japanese motorcycle, there's a lot of how am I going to be seen that dictates what we choose, dictates what we listen to, dictates how we speak, where we shop, what we watch. Most people in America today don't watch the news based on what they want to see. They watch the news based off what their neighbors are going to think of them. And so they line up to conform, to be part of the herd. And it's just a matter of what herd am I trying to be part of. And this is not a criticism, because I put myself in that mix. But it's just an honest revelation that, hey, we're sometimes making jazz inaccessible to others by making it seem like you have to be so aloof and so sophisticated to get the intellectual slant that my mature self can see. I get it. And I think the musicians would laugh at us a lot of times going, no, there's nothing to get. We was just wilding out. We was just being cray-cray. And when you get past Coltrane with that sincerity and that depth of spirituality, a lot of that noise-making stuff becomes tougher to find a place for in my daily listening routine. And I dove into some stuff last week, some Roswell Rudd. I played a Pharoah Saunders record. I was in the mood for it. And the Roswell Rudd record was a challenge. It got pretty dissonant pretty quick after the first song. And dissonance is fine when you're in the mood for it. But again, I'm not going deeper down that road. I've spoken about that stuff plenty. I just wanted to kind of add that 2 cents that everything we do, where we drive, what we eat, what we drink, what we eat, what we listen to, what we watch, a lot of it's governed by how we want to be seen. And so those people who deny that as being part of what they choose to listen to and what they want people to see them listening to, I think they're lying to themselves. And it's okay. I mean, I probably would still be that same person had I not DJed for 20 years and had my piosity shifted by connecting with people was more important to me. I want to connect with this room, not seem above this room. And a lot of DJs, they make that mistake. They go out there and they're very self-indulgent. Like, I know everything, listen to me, let me teach you all something. And I think it's a very bad way to approach DJing or even playing music at a party for your friends. To try to be this pompous, aloof, intellectual, sophisticated, and let me teach you all something while you're here being entertained in my home. You'd be better served to play stuff people love. Play some Thelma Houston, Don't Treat Me This Way. See how different your events go. So, again, it's just my 2 cents. What the fuck do I know? You know what I mean? I have made a living at it, but there's lots of different ways you can make a living. Appreciate you all. If you want to support the channel, please hit that like button, subscribe. If you want to support the channel, please go to my Patreon and pledge a few dollars a month. It's always appreciated, and it does help. You know what I mean? It does help. If you want to go to my merchandise store, in the description below, there's some great Jazz Shepherd merchandise available for anybody who wishes to advertise for the channel on their back. Always appreciated. Appreciate you all. You all stay safe. I'll probably make another episode come Wednesday or so. I got a dear friend coming up into town from Los Angeles. I turned 50 in 5 days. 4 days. August 4th, I turned 50. So that threshold is finally here. And will I make an episode between now and then? I might try to squeeze something in. We'll see how my time allows. Again, I'm have a guest here a couple days. It's going to be a crazy few days. We're going to Chicago next weekend for my birthday. But there'll definitely be at least one episode between now and the end of next week. Y'all be safe. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.